Thank you, Chair. Prime Minister, I think the last time I had the privilege and the pleasure of discussing with you at the Liaison Committee was on the 18th of July, when I compared you to Gloria Gaynor and your tremendous powers of survival. And on that day, Boris Johnson was making his resignation speech at the same time as you were at the committee here. You've outwitted them all, and yet you continue. Boris has been fully outmanoeuvred. He is nowhere. And your own can kicking down the road has continued, and your changing the nuance has continued. And I noticed today that, I mean, you've told us before, there were three options for Brexit. There was deal, there was no deal, there was revoke. But now you're tagging on people's vote. How much should we read into your change on people's vote?
Nothing whatsoever. I mean, that is the options have been there. What we see from... Sorry?
One of the options you were given before, it was revoke, it was deal, no deal and revoke. Now it's deal, no deal, revoke and people's vote.
My position on people's vote has not changed, if that's what you're trying to suggest, because Parliament has raised the issue of the people's vote. There are those in Parliament who are supporting a people's vote. There are those in Parliament who have perhaps previously supported honouring the referendum, who are now supporting a people's vote. It is a second referendum. That's what it is. My view remains the same, that we should deliver on the first referendum. I think that is. I think that's important. And you said that I was kicking the can down the road. Actually, no, I've tried not to kick the can down the road. I've been voting in order to ensure that the can is not kicked any further and that we actually leave.
I remarked the 18th of July, but I'm surprised that you're still Prime Minister then, and you've managed to kick the can down the road further. So well done. To move on a little bit, the expectation was the UK was going to leave on the 29th of March. And that the EU trade deals will be rolled over. In fact, a second after midnight, I think. Now, as far as it is at the moment, only trade deals covering 5.5% of UK trade out of a total of 14.4% of UK trade that we have taking place under EU trade agreement partners. What barriers will British exporters face trading on WTO terms? And we'll also take the opportunity to make sure that people, particularly in your own party, who get up at Prime Minister's questions and suggest that trading under WTO is a good idea, is in fact quite the reverse.
Well, first of all, we obviously do trade with some countries around the world on WTO terms. In relation to the agreements, we've signed agreements with Switzerland, Chile, Faroe Islands, Eastern and Southern African Economic Partnership Agreement States, Israel and the Palestinian Authority. We signed mutual recognition agreements with the US, Australia and New Zealand, and we expect others to follow soon. A number of other agreements are at an advanced stage. I think that obviously we're still working on enabling people to have the certainty in relation to those trade deals.
The Faroese have done quite well, a small agreement, but it's 16-1 in their favour. They export 16 times more than they import from the UK, so I can see why they were very keen to have the trade agreement continuing, and wisely so. Well done those in Tórshavn, again outwitting others. Prime Minister, the whole process that you've gone around Brexit, you came to Parliament at a later stage. You didn't take Parliament with you, and then you found that from various sides people rejected your withdrawal agreement, the deal that you'd struck with the European Union, and you have had difficulty with that since then. But moving forward to future trade agreements, do you think there's anything to be learned from the process that went so badly wrong for you in the Brexit process?
Well, obviously there are certain arrangements that are in place in relation to Parliament's role in trade agreements generally. In relation to the future relationship with the European Union, as I indicated earlier, as I said in the 29th of March debate that we had on the withdrawal agreement, that we accepted the premise of the Gareth Snell, Lisa Nandy amendment in relation to the role of Parliament in the future on negotiating objectives for that future phase.
Any future trade agreements, should Parliament, you think, have a meaningful vote at the outset to help even guide negotiators during trade agreement negotiations?
Well, I think if you look at the Nandy-Snell amendment that we said that we would accept, that makes it clear the role of Parliament in the negotiating objectives.
for all trade agreements in future? There would be a meaningful vote in Parliament.
No, for this, sorry, thank you. That said that MPs would be empowered to set the negotiating mandate for Phase 2. There'd be a regular report from the PM on the negotiations and the extent to which those reflected the negotiating mandate, the outcome reflected the negotiating mandate, and MPs must approve signing any agreement on the future relationship with the European Union. That is about...
I'm talking about any and all other future trade agreements.
This is about...
anything that can be learned from that.
This is about the future relationship that we have with the European Union. As you will be aware, there are already arrangements in place in relation to the role that Parliament takes in and discussions in relation to trade agreements more generally.
The 27% hit on questions is still continuing. Prime Minister, there's a climate emergency being talked about and declared by various people. What do you feel about that?
Well, I think that climate change is one of the, as I said in the House of Commons in PMQs, I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we face across the world. I mean, the term emergency has been used. I think the difficulty I have with that is the term emergency suggests this is something that has just suddenly arisen. And it's not the case, and that you just have to look at what the government's excellent record in climate change. We have been working on this, and we continue to work on it. There is more for us to do. We recognise that. But if you look at the fact that, as I say, I think we, since 2010, we have had decarbonised more than any other G20 country. We have been at the leading edge of ensuring that we're working on this.
Still well over double the targets for carbon in electricity production. And a branch of your government, Ofgem, is sitting on the possibility of connecting to some of the best wind resources in Europe for spurious reasons. Would you undertake to look into the possibility of interconnectors being used properly to where there's wind?
Well, I'm very pleased to say that obviously as in terms of wind turbines and the provision of renewable energy from wind, once again we have an excellent record. I was able to be, I know there are wind farms which in relation to off the Scottish coast. I was in Grimsby a number of weeks ago with the company there that is one of the leading providers of the equipment for wind farms. I think there's a great deal that we can be doing in relation to that.
Final brief question. Why can't you accept Scotland having the same autonomy in the UK as the UK has regards the EU, particularly with referendums? The EU does not stop you holding referendums or even attempts to interfere. Why would you interfere with Scotland doing the same?
Scotland had a referendum on its independence, on its role in the UK.
People's vote.
We've had a referendum, and I've been very clear, as I've said.
Is that what you're saying?
We've had a referendum in the United Kingdom on membership of the European Union. My view is that we should abide by the result of that referendum and deliver on it. Scotland had a referendum in 2014, and my view is that Scotland should continue to abide by the result of that referendum, which was that it should be part of the United Kingdom.
Thank you.